Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. And let's just take a view at who we have here. MashaAllah. What would really be nice is, I suppose we could probably do it in the chat. I would really appreciate if people would introduce themselves and, a few lines of who you are, where you are, what you do, how you got introduced to this course, a few things like that. That would be really great. That would help us out. I'm very keen to hear about that. Okay. All right. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu salam ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Wa ala alihi wa sahabatihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. So what we'll do is, while we're waiting for people, we're sort of allowing time for them to enter in, we'll just quickly go over what we went over in our last session. And we mentioned the fact that the body is the carrier of the ruh. These are a few maxims. Body is the carrier of the ruh and intrinsically connected, each affecting with one another. And we talked about, the fact that the main essence of the human being is his ruh, like the rider. But the rider needs a transport. And so the body is the transport. And so the transport is not the focal point. It's not the pivotal point. It is, however, an important point. Without the transport, the body is not going to move about. And similarly, so taking care of one's transport is critically important. Right? And a healthy ruh facilitates a healthy body, obviously. And a healthy body facilitates a life of ubudiyya. And all the dimensions of health, which we talk about in our full series, this is kind of one a shortened, condensed version of the second module, which is the physical health. Basically, this holistic health program, it encompasses 6 dimensions of health. And one is, number 1, spiritual health, which is the basis. Secondly, physical health, which is what we're looking into now in a sort of condensed, summarized version. Intellectual health, emotional health, social health, and ultimately environmental health, from the micro to the macro. So all of these dimensions of health, they affect one another. Your Rouhani health is going to impact all dimensions of health. It's even going to impact, the outer environment, the greater environment, drastically. And everything, below that in terms of, the individual, the family, the community, etc. The Rouhani power, the Rouhani, health and well-being. Physical health is also going to impact your Rouhani well-being. Just as your Rouhani well-being, your spiritual well-being impacts your physical well-being also lifts and, sort of helps along and facilitates, as we said here, facilitates a life of ubudiyya by facilitating your ruh as well. It impacts the ruh, it gives it, the ruh feels more prone to do good things, right? And the body, that's also the very critical thing that I hope that everybody considered this an important takeaway from last session. The body is not yours, it's an amana. It is not my body, as they're prone to say in this day and age. It is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are the custodians of our bodies, like every other resource that we have from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we will be, of course, asked about it. The body's amazing ni'mah, it requires shukr. Shukr is gratitude. Gratitude is of 3 basic stages. Number 1, the acknowledgement of gratitude. First of all, we conceptualize that, yes, I've been granted a favor. And so I acknowledge that on the tongue, the acknowledgement of the tongue, connected to that cognition, that yes, that acknowledgement that yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me, there's so many benefits and so many wondrous bounties that they cannot be calculated by the world's systems of calculation. One human being. And then that acknowledgement on the tongue should permeate the heart. It should actually enter into the heart and fill the heart full of gratitude. And this is perhaps the core of what real gratitude is, because when the heart is filled with a sense of gratitude, it conceptualizes it, it acknowledges on the tongue, and the heart becomes filled with gratitude. Now, that grateful heart will facilitate and initiate a grateful body, which is going to act in accordance with, act accordance to and be congruent to what that particular favor, what should our response be to it? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us wealth, for example. So the gratitude, the practical, tactical gratitude of wealth is that we use it moderately on ourselves, and the excess we distribute, to those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has exhorted us and has encouraged us to spend upon. That is a practical gratitude. And so therefore the ulama say the shukr is of those three stages: on the tongue, in the heart, and ultimately using the ni'mat, using the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way in which He has designed it to be used, and in the way in which He uses according to His sharia. So this body, we're engaging in some sort of activity all the time, even if it's sleeping. So with our intention, with our sleeping, the use of the body is always continuously going on. And however we're using that body, it's either a righteous action or a non-righteous action. It's either taking us close to Allah or farther away. It's taking us closer to paradise or closer to the fire of Jahannam. So this body is, it's a macro ni'mat. It is. The body itself is not simply one body. Every aspect of it, as we mentioned, 60 to 90 trillion cells, every cell having approximately the same amount of atoms. So every atom that we have of our existence requires gratitude, and being grateful is the body's to use it how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to use it, and engaging in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to engage in. And so if we're healthy, if these bodies are healthy, it'll be much easier to engage in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, provided the soul is aligned, the mind is aligned, and otherwise. And so who is thankless for a blessing has undertaken its elimination. Who is thankful for it ties it with a cord of affirmation. And we talked about that example, like the person ties up his camel. The camel can graze, but he can't get away from the master. Similarly, our intelligence, that unique intelligence that is human, and no other species has been given like, that is supposed to also control us from escaping from the rules and regulations set by our master as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And who is more fit, he's more able to do righteous works. That goes to, provided, of course, the heart, and the mind is aligned, of course, and to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in higher levels. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exhorts us to compete in righteousness. And we talked about that probably, that man has a competitive spirit, but it needs to be like every other, what we call ghariza, every other type of natural instinct of the man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has inspired the human being with goodness, and basic, basic vice, basic virtue, basic vice is inherent in, the sort of nature of human beings, if provided that nature has not been totally distorted, which has happened pretty much in this 21st century. We've worked very hard to totally denature ourselves, and therefore we don't recognize right and we don't recognize wrong. And therefore, as the Prophet ﷺ warned, that a time is coming when not only will people not be enforcing right and forbidding the evil, much less doing it, but they will be ordering for evil and preventing you from righteousness. And this, of course, is also quite prevalent, in the world today. So we can see how close we are, to the end. Nevertheless, our own personal end is the time of death, as one Sahabi said. He came to the Prophet ﷺ and questioned, Ya Rasulullah, mata sa'? When is the day of resurrection? When is the hour coming? So Prophet ﷺ replied to him, so what have you prepared for it? Right? Well, he said, I haven't prepared much of salat, much of som. I haven't done so much of righteousness, meaning that it doesn't mean that he prayed once in a while. It means that he would have prayed 5 times a day, and perhaps, what would be moderately and, acceptable, but he didn't go far off, into extremes on those in those activities. But he said, I have love of Allah and His Rasul, Nabi Alayhi said, and which Sayyidina Anas, the great Sahabi, he said, and this statement was one of the most beloved things that we ever heard the Prophet saying, and that was that he said, Al-mar'u ma'aman ahab, the person is going to be with the one that he loves. So we affirm that we love Allah, His Rasul, we love Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and all the Sahaba and Tabi'een and Salihin, and we hope to be with them even though our actions don't measure up to them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us. So we have been created, to compete. That is part of our nature. And so to compete in righteousness and excellence, obviously having vitality, having health, having, energy, it requires these things, it makes it easier. Not to say that if you don't have that, if Allah has tested you with out of your control, certain disease or certain deficiency you could be created without an arm, for example. You could be created blind. You could be afflicted by whatever. This is all, everyone has their own test and trial. And within that context, we do the best that we can. That's excellence. Excellence is not a specific measured, thresholds. Excellence is in proportion to each individual and his circumstances. You're doing the best that you can possibly do given your circumstances. That's excellence. Some Sahaba, they had a date. They took a date and broke it in half and gave half, in charity. Perhaps they would have given the two, where they saw that the need was so. They went hungry and gave the one date they had in charity, as Aisha radiallahu anha did. And then you have somebody who has billions. For example, somebody has $10 billion and he gives $5 billion in charity. Well, where is a half of a date as opposed to 5 billion in charity? It's not the quantity, it is the quality which counts. This individual gave half of their wealth or more and extremely in the need thereof. Here, you're still left with 5 billion, quite a lot. Nobody needs that amount. And so the need was really not much. It was a kind gesture, nevertheless. So proportionately. So in this competition, it's not, that I reached here and I did my 100 yards and so many. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at the resources that He's given us, the physical stature that He's given us, the circumstances that He's given us, etc., etc. And so one does the best that he possibly can. Those who struggle and strive in our way, and everybody's struggle and everybody's striving is going to be in a relative to him and to him or her or their particular situation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mentions that. And we mentioned also that this competition is a competition of love and affection, love of brotherhood. We love to see people getting ahead. We don't get jealous. We don't get envious. We love to see people going ahead, and that encourages us to also try and move ahead along with them, if not ahead of them, and they would reciprocate, in a similar way. And therefore, we pray for one another that Allah take so-and-so even farther, along the path and take him into the higher echelons of excellence. So it is a loving and a competition of brotherhood and love and affection and respect. This is quite different than the cutthroat competition of the material world. Inna Allah ma'alladhina taqaw walladhina hum muhsinun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the people who exercise taqwa. We mentioned taqwa is doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do and abstaining from what He wants us to abstain from. That's basically the thing. And this is going to provide that barrier, which is a taqwa coming from wiqaya being a barrier. What kind of barrier? A barrier to save us and protect us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's vengeance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's displeasure. And that can only be done through action, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's grace and by His tawfiq. And He loves the people who are muhsinun. Muhsinun, muhsin, it's the plural of muhsin. Muhsin is from ihsan. Ihsan means practically, or it means for all intent and purposes, it means excellence, good. Husn means goodness, beauty, goodness, pureness, etc. So the people who do good, and as we mentioned, they do excellent. What is excellence? It's different for everybody. They do the best they possibly can, given the circumstances that they have, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided for them. So indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who observe taqwa and those who do excellence. So ihsan, to do excellence, to do, live a life of ubudiyah, it requires strength and vitality. This is not possible for the weak and the sick, right? Even though that might be an overstatement, it is possible to the extent that Allah gives you tawfiq, but nevertheless, it's going to be difficult to reach those high levels that you would otherwise if you were strong and had vitality and energy and strength. And also, so one thing is physical strength, another is strength of purpose and objective, determination to do what's right. And if we don't have that determination, then there's millions of distractions bombarding us from every side. And so, and now with this unprecedented fitna and, distraction called the internet, net, mind you, nets are for catching things, right? Fly net, fish net, internet, people net, catching people. And this is basically what it does. Yes, we do benefit from it, but it is catching most of us and disposing of us as well. And probably there's never been such a distraction and such an effective tool of Iblis, to take people off. I mean, to get involved, in gross sinful acts, or at least to witness those, it wasn't so easy to do that. You had to be a certain age, you had to go to certain places, you could be observed. It was very difficult. Now you just, with a click, you can be involved in anything. It is horrific. It is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may save us all. And so therefore, a great amount of health will be, in the health of our determination, the strength of our determination to remain controlled within the bounds of Sharia and remain aloof and disconnected from all of these distractions and snares that are out to hook us and snare us from all directions. And so therefore, how do we do that? The ulama say that what you do is, you will not be safe. You have three major enemies. They say you have three major enemies. One within and two without. Within, our own nafs. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has said that, your most dangerous enemy, the most, ferocious, and the enemy with the most animosity is your own nafs. Nafsaka allati bayna jambayk, between your two sides, that nafs. And it's interior. You can't get rid of it. You can't, you can't exile it. You can't kill it, because it's you. So you have to deal with it. You have to control it. You have to learn it. You have to learn its idiosyncrasies, and you have to learn how to nurture it. You have to learn how to control it, bring it under control, tame it. And ultimately, if the process is really done perfectly, then ultimately that nafs becomes mutma'inna. It becomes pacified. It becomes subdued. It submits. And so otherwise, this nafs is ammaratun bisu. That's the first level of nafs. It's just ordering us to do all kinds of wrong things. That's what it does. There was a pious man, he's mentioned, Imam Ghazali mentioned in one of his books, he says there was a pious man, and his nafs told him one year, look, go out in jihad this year. So he said, go out in jihad? Nafs is telling me to go in jihad? You know what that means? That means, going out facing death, all this sacrifices. He said, yeah, exactly, absolutely. Yeah, go, please. This is really strange. Nafs is never going to tell me to do something good, much less jihad, that great endeavor. And he kept on, he says, no, this just is not possible. So ultimately, he finally got his nafs to, come clean and admit, okay, what's the deal? What's going on? He said, look, with all this mujahid and all this, going against me all day, all night, and that's basically what suluk is all about, going against your nafs. He said, you kill me multiple times every day and night. Just do away with me one time, and so I can relax, basically. So nafs ammaratun bisu, it's constantly telling us to do wrong things. That's what it does. And then you have this other stage of nafs al-lawama. It's blaming us. You did this, you did that. Look at you, And this is a good thing. But ultimately, if we continue on the path and we work with ourselves, work with our nafs and train it, ultimately it will subdue and it will, succumb and will surrender to the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it takes a lot of training, like training a wild horse. You're going to really have a tough time in the beginning, but after a period of time, it will ultimately break its, rebelliousness. And so similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us al-tawfiq. That's a very long and actually a lifelong struggle. We need to find the people who know how to go about that struggle and connect with them and take their instruction, and that Allah give us al-tawfiq. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the noble things. He doesn't love these useless and frivolous and trivial things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves the high ideal, the high ideals and high aspirations towards goodness. And He doesn't like these mundane, useless pursuits, which we tend to fill up our time in, unfortunately. And therefore, Nabi Sallallahu says, "Min husni Islam al-mar tarku ma la ya'ni." Among the best qualities and wonderful qualities of Islam is to leave what doesn't concern you. Now let's look at the Quran and Sunnah. I think this is kind of an overview again. These concepts we need to hear again and again, by the way, obviously, because we tend to just drift away. That's part of our being human. Insan from nisyan. Nisyan in Arabic means to forget. 5 times a day we need to remind ourselves that the same Fatiha every time, 5 times a day, in every rakat, and nafil, and sunnah, and we need to keep hearing that and need to keep making that supplication, because that is our constant need, as much, if not more, definitely more than our need for oxygen itself. If you don't get oxygen, the maximum that happens is you die. If you don't get hidayat, which is what we're basically asking for and learning how to ask for it in the Fatiha, asking for guidance. If we don't get guidance, then not only we die, obviously we will die, but after the death, it will be a continuous failure. So a failure of health it will end at the maximum, its end will be up to the death. But the absence of guidance, if we're misguided, if we come off of guidance, we lose our iman, then it has eternal repercussions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us and protect us all. Ameen thumma ameen. So let's look at the Quran. What does the Quran say about physical health? Does it say anything about physical health? Well, we have 2 kinds of texts in that correlation. We have a text which is a direct text, something that says something specifically, and something which indirectly, it infers that, or it includes that within the broader meaning of that text. So here we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Inna Allah ya'murukum an tu'addu al-amanati ila ahliha." And it's a very comprehensive ayat, and it has many, many, many unlimited applications. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you to deliver trust back to their owners. And we already talked about that. The body is a trust, right? And it has to be delivered back to its owner. And if you have been given a trust, the owner expects you to take care of it and deliver it back in the condition that he gave it to you, if not better. Normal wear and tear, okay, fine. But otherwise, you have to take care of it. Otherwise, he's going to take you to task. So this amanat of the body is the amanat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we'll have to deliver it back to its actual owner. Lillahi ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. To Allah belongs all that is in the heavens and the earth, including our bodies, which we'll have to give an account for. Secondly, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة. Again, a general principle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, and make not your own hands contribute to your destruction. In other words, don't with your own hands Don't destroy yourselves by your own hands. That may seem, well, who would do so? Well, probably not many people would do unless someone is suicidal. Not many would do intentionally, but inadvertently, this is what we do. By disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by not following sunnah, by succumbing to the trends and the environment, we are actually, by succumbing and not pushing back, and putting up our defenses, by succumbing to that, we are actually destroying ourselves with our own hands. Interestingly, this it's mentioned in the books of tafsir that this ayat was mentioned in connection to something quite unique, and that was that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, after, of course, the beginning of Islam, it was hardship after hardship, fight after fight, torture after torture, and after Hijrah also, the people left everything in Mecca, they came to Medina, everything had to be sacrificed, everything had to be put on the line, poverty, hunger, thirst, and on top of that, they have this formidable enemy that they're constantly, having to deal with. Enemies from inside Medina, outside Medina, the Arab tribes, etc. Ultimately, things start getting a bit better, so they say, Ya Rasulullah, give us, we are agriculturists, particularly the people of Medina, our lands, our agricultural lands, which is the basic means of sustenance. We haven't had time for the past several years to look after these things. Probably they've just kind of gone to shambles. So can we not, take a little sort of break and, sort of tweak, these, our agricultural lands a bit, get them back up to an acceptable standard. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this ayat. Don't destroy your hands by yourself. I mean, so what kind of destruction is that? They just want to get their economic, situation a little bit more under control. Well, because turning one's attention at that juncture, at that very critical juncture where Islam is still that fledgling, infant which is trying to stand on its own 2 feet. At that point, if we give it even a moment's of, if we take our full attention off of it for a moment, there's every possibility that it could be disastrous. So this is not the time for that. Not that we can't look after our agricultural lands, we can't look after our business over there, but given the context. So when we see that there is a demand of the religion upon us, not heeding that, is destructive. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq to understand that. So in our context here, how would that apply? I think it's pretty straightforward. If we know that such and such types of foods or such and types of eating patterns or lifestyle is detrimental to us, then doing so knowingly, what are we doing? We are actually, by our own omission and by our own actions, we are, virtually destroying ourselves with our own hands. Okay. Example. And then people, ask is this question of halal and haram also comes up, in this context. For example, when I was a kid, the concept was, everybody smoked cigarettes. If you didn't smoke a cigarette, you were a sissy, basically. Men, women, even. That was the thing back in the 1950s, 1960s. Everybody smoked. Then somewhere, I don't remember when exactly, somewhere in the 1960s, they started realizing this is really not very good for you. So they said, they put on the cigarette packages, cigarette smoking may be hazardous to your health. I remember that. Okay, maybe. All right. Then ultimately, as more studies and more research goes on, they find out it's not maybe, it is bad for your health. And so they wrote now, cigarette smoking is bad for your health. Dangerous, hazardous to your health, I think was the wording they used. Okay. At this point, if we know that this cigarette smoking is bad for your health, people that say this is halal, haram, makruh. Look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't destroy yourselves. And science tells us, and it's not a scientific theory, it's scientific fact. By the way, science, they come up with these theories. They're still looking into the matter. It's not factual evidence, like the sun is in the middle of the sky. However, we have certain things that have become scientific fact. You'll never find Islam going against that. You might find scientific theory may not click with the things that are established in Islam. So science better go back and do its homework and re-engineer the thing because they didn't get it right. If it's not syncing with Quran or Sunnah, then it's science that needs to get their act together. We're fine. Okay. So now it's scientific fact that cigarette smoking is not only hazardous to health. Now what they put, cigarette smoking kills. It kills you. So now you tell me, if you're going to open up a pack of cigarettes and start smoking, and you know it's killing you, is this okay or not? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not destroy yourself with your own hands. And I think that's about as straightforward as it gets. That's, you may not be as quick as putting a pistol at your head, but it's going to ultimately going to do that. So therefore, let's take that and look at, what is out there in the market today. So on the one hand, we have what is considered by the Shari perimeters being halal. And we have another perimeter, which is also mentioned in the Quran when we come to the ayat, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to eat what is halal and tayyib. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So those things which we know are destructive, for example, a lot of these refined carbohydrates, white sugar. My Shaikh in Medina used to say, "This white sugar, this is white poison." White sugar, white heroin. It's pretty much ultimately the same thing. Of course, I'm not saying sugar is having the shari stand of heroin, but just as heroin will destroy you, sugar, particularly excess of it, and with all the other corrupted elements of our skewed lifestyle, it's causing most of our problems. These what we call the amrad al-muzmina, civilizational diseases, some of our scholars call it, because it's basically it's based on wrong lifestyle, heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, dementia, even. These are things that don't happen because of some particular virus or some particular bad bacteria. These are conditions, unnatural conditions, like cancer itself. It's basically lifestyle. Cancer is these basically these cells that start growing abnormally. And we've got billions of such kind of cells that kind of rebel, they kind of, get out of line. And we have what we call an immune system. And that immune system is an internal army that just, is always on the lookout for these kind of, rebel elements and just does away with them. And so if your immune system is strong and healthy, you're not generally going to be afflicted by things like that because your immune system is going to deal with it. But now your immune system is now, it's just it's just knocked out of whack. It's just totally capacitated. So anything that comes along is just going to create havoc in the body. So those type of foods, those type of drinks, those type of, whatever, even though they might not be per se haram specifically, but they're not tayyib, they're not good for you. If they're not good for you, they're probably detrimental for you. And so even though they might not be haram per se, but they're detrimental. They're not going to help you. They're going to bring a deterioration in your health rather than, affecting you in a more healthy impact. So is that what a Muslim wants to be engaged in? Or does this ayat tell us don't bring about destruction, either full destruction or partial destruction? Don't destroy yourselves. So one would think we'll totally destroy, but even partial destroying, this is amanat. We're supposed to take care of it, So when the company doesn't say, okay, don't destroy this company car. Well, yeah, obviously you don't totally destroy it, but you also don't knowingly let it, fall into service, out of service, neglect it so that, it becomes impaired, it becomes, faulty. So we have to look at these things like that as well. Take cognizance. May Allah give us all tawfiq. Here we have also a very interesting hadith. Nabi Sallallahu says, "Al-mu'min al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min al-dha'if." It's a long hadith, but this is the main part that we want to look at. ولا تعجز واحرص على ما ينفعك واستعن بالله. Actually, what happened here is that the wording got my laptop got lost in Turkey, and these things were floating around in cyber cloud somewhere. And then when I reloaded them, the Arabic got all kind of messed up here. But in any case, المؤمن الضيف خير من المؤمن الضيف وفي كل خير وفي كل خير لا تعجز يحرص على ما ينفعك واستعن بالله ولا تعجز. That's actually the sequence of the hadith. So a strong believer is better and dear to Allah than a weak one, although both are good. There's good, there's khair in all people of Iman, but obviously the person who's stronger, he's more virtuous and he's more beloved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Adhere to that which is beneficial for you. Very, very comprehensive thing. Just ponder over that, and I think it's pretty straightforward. Keep asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, and do not be feeble and incapable. La ta'jiz. Don't, kind of cop out, as it were. Don't kind of just give up. No. Mu'min is positive. He always has hope for the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Abshir. Be on the hope of glad tidings from his help. Okay, let's go back to the mu'min al-qawi, the strong mu'min. What is meant by the strong mu'min? Usually when we have more time, we have a discussion about that. Okay, what do you think that means? Somebody says, it means he's strong. He's got big muscles, he's in good health. Okay, that's definitely strength. What about spiritual strength? Yeah, of course. What about emotional strength? Strength of determination? Whatever strength, any kind of strength that's going to help a mu'min be a mu'min, a better mu'min, any kind of strength, as Allah says, whatever kind of power, whatever type of equipment you can muster up when you have to face the enemy, just whatever you can find, which means two things. Number one is you do put a concerted effort to whatever resources are available, use it. At the same time, you don't knock yourselves out if you think you don't have sufficiency, because it's not Allah, it's not you and your stuff that's going to bring about the success. It is Allah. There's no victory except actually by the decision of Allah, whatever you have or you don't have. But nevertheless, Allah has made the system like that. So He says, okay, whatever you can muster up, muster it up. That's fine. So similarly, any type of strength, physical, spiritual, emotional, whatever kind of strength, it might be external, might be internal, all of that, is to be part of what the hadith is mentioning thereafter. Adhere, always be keen and after that which is going to benefit you. Then what better benefit, better benefit than vibrant health, good health. Nabi alayhi salam says the meaning of this hadith, man asbaha aminan fi sirbi. He wakes up in the morning and he's content in his heart. Mu'afan fi jasadihi. His body is healthy. He's not suffering from these, these difficult diseases, debilitating diseases. And lahu quti yawmihi. He has something to eat for the day. It's not like he's got a month's provision or a year's provision. He's got, an IRA fund, for his retirement. He just has something to eat for today. فَكَأَنَّهُ حِيزَتِ الدُّنْيَا بِحَذَافِرِهَا. It's like the whole world is now his. Because what more do you need in the world, actually? You're content in your heart, which is 99% of the equation, and you are healthy in your body, and you've got something to eat for the day. Subhanallah, what more do you want? So having this kind of strength, this type of vitality, having this, being whatever type of strength, that one, that would be helpful for a mu'min to be a better mu'min, that'll help him along in his journey. All of that. Okay. So hunger and nourishment. Now, usually what they talk about in these types of trainings or in this type of curriculums, we talk about eat this, don't eat that. But actually, if you think about it, more important than or at least as important, if not more important, is remaining hungry sufficiently rather than overeating or spending more time necessary and more quantity and time in eating. But most of the time, we are not eating. We are actually remain hungry. And we have fasting, we have som, which you remain hungry the whole day, which is very significant, in our journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we're going to see, inshallah, very soon. So hunger and nourishment. So we begin with hunger because that's actually the default mode. Eating is to replenish, as we're going to see. Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says very, stellarly, he explains this concept. So let's look at the hunger and nourishment from Quran, Sunnah, and these sayings of our pious ancestors. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O you who believed, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. And we've just now gone through Ramadan, so probably we've been hearing things of this nature. No harm in bringing it up again here, because it's not simply for Ramadan, it's a continuous process. So, over the people of Iman, decreed upon you is fasting as it was decreed upon those before you. Fasting was with every prophet from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every Rasul that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he came with the same belief set. And he also came with the same basic tenets. There was always salat in deen. There was always som in deen. There was always a type of zakat in deen, etc. There's always some halal and haram injunctions in deen, the basic tenets. But they went on evolving until the final version of Islam with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, what's in terms of fasting? What is the wisdom behind that? What is the main takeaway? What is the main objective of that? That you may acquire taqwa. Allahu Akbar. So taqwa is not something that grows on trees. It's not something that is in your DNA. It's something that you have to acquire. You have to develop. So how do we do that? So fasting is one of the great and one of the most effective trainings, inwardly and outwardly, to bring about, provided that it is a full taqwa. And usually in this context, we talk about holistic fasting. So we talk about holistic health. We talk about holistic fasting not only with the stomach and what's below the stomach, but fasting with the eyes and the ears and the tongue and the mind and the heart. So we're going to look at Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, rahimahullah ta'ala, as everything he writes. It's just amazing. So I tried to sort of summarize what he had to say in this conjunction. He says, fasting has an amazing effect to protect the outer limbs and the inner strength, externally, internally, and defending them from corrupt and detrimental matter that, if overpowers them, ruins them. So it's a kind of a detox, if you keep on eating all the time and you're not giving your body a chance to, shut off all of that excess, it builds up these, this corrupt matter that's going to ultimately destroy you. That's what most of our disease is these days. These totally, these diseases that totally, debilitate people, cancer and heart disease, arthritis. People just, they just freeze up. Diabetes, type 2 diabetes is 100% reversible, but they don't tell you that generally because it's a huge industry. That's another issue. Perhaps we get time to just touch on that. We talk about the forms of prevention. Okay, so he goes on to say it also empties the bad elements, so these bad waste toxics that prevent the health. Fasting, it's a detox, and all the holistic natural health systems, they all recognize this, right? From the ancients up until today. Fasting protects the health of the heart and the limbs and rejuvenates them from what the hands of passion and desire have stripped them from. This is just such a beautiful statement. Just think about this for a moment. Fasting protects the health of the heart and limbs, okay, and rejuvenates them from what the hands of passion and desire have stripped from them. When we're engaging in sin, and some of the sin is gluttony, that's direct, that we can understand that direct correlation. Gluttony, and bad food habits, in terms of what we eat and how we eat and, the quantity. But not only that, but other activities that we engage in that are sinful, that fasting helps to, curtail, because in hunger, it curtails the nafs. That's a long discussion there, but I think all of us are to some extent cognizant of that. So the hands of passion, when we let our passions get away, it just destroys our health inwardly and outwardly, spiritually and physically, and in all other, and on all other dimensions as well. So it's therefore the greatest facilitator of taqwa. It's stripping us of all of these things. It's bringing our passions and our, under control, and keeping the stomach empty, is one of the greatest ways of enhancing one's spirituality. Our ulama, they say, if you have anything important to do it before you eat. Because after you eat, all your energy is going to be going to your digestive system, and it's hard to think clearly and effectively and deeply. It's hard to do anything really, particularly if one overeats. So fasting is just a great thing, and obviously fasting in Ramadan, we also have, the various sunan, the fasts of sunan, 3 days, in the what we call the layali al-bayad or bid, the 13th and 14th and 15th. We have Thursdays and Mondays. We have other days, Ashura, etc. So we have this constant, continuous opportunities for this detoxing, spiritually, physically, emotionally, intellectually, all of this detoxing, which is going to facilitate, higher levels of taqwa. And based on taqwa, actually, is the madar al-madar, as they say, that's the basis of success. The Quran itself is designed to benefit the people of taqwa, not anybody else. To the extent we have taqwa, to the extent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to benefit us by the Quran itself. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the muttaqin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among them. Ameen. So here also, Nabi Sallallahu says, Sumu tasahu, very interesting, fast and obtain health. Well, we've been discussed that in quite a lot of detail. I have a very interesting story, but it will take too much time, so I won't tell you about it. One of our Shaikh, he was afflicted. The khalas was that he was in a journey. It was a Ramadan, and he started coughing blood, and it came to light that he had TB in the last stages. And so they wanted to confine him to the hospital. He said, nothing doing. And he was a great scholar. And he said, no, this hadith says, sumu tasehu, fast and become healthy. So I'm going to continue my journey, because also another section of this hadith says, safidu tasehu, travel and gain health. So I'm traveling and I'm going to fast. And subhanAllah, when by the time he got to where he was going, I believe he was going to Australia, he was fine. So, and inda dhanni abdi bi, Allah says, I am with the expectation of my slave. So Allah can do everything, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Nabi tells the truth. We believe it, it works. If you don't believe it, it's not going to work. If we believe it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it work. So fast and gain health. So it is great, in all dimensions of health. So absence of hunger is what causes most of the deaths today. We're not dying of starvation. That's very difficult to do. It will take you months on end without any food whatsoever to die of starvation, because you're going to have to, lose all your fat, and all of your muscle tissues are going to be, utilized. It takes a long time. Yes, thirst, that might be a week or two. Without air, you're not going to live for more than 5, 6, 7 minutes. But without food, you're going to go a long time. What's happening is, what is killing us is the absence of hunger, overeating, wrong eating. This is what's, killing us more than anything. Hunger increases vitality, energy, brain power, and memory. Our ancestors, their memorization capacity. But look at what they used to eat. They would never eat more than twice a day. Impossible. Many of them would eat once a day. Some of them, many of them were, they used to fast continuously. And look at the vitality, the energy, the sheer amount of output that it's phenomenal. If you look at Suyuti or any of these great scholars, the output that is humanly impossible, but it's there in front of us, so we know they did it, but otherwise, impossible. Imam Sarakhsi, In prison, he dictates from his memory 30 volumes. I mean, my two hands stretched out, that's how big that book is. All from his memory. All the masail, all the various, injunctions in fiqh, according to all the various schools of thought, with their proofs and with the discussion and debate of their proofs, all from his memory. These were not people who used to eat all day long. These were people who ate very little, but they ate very good stuff, and they had all the other elements of taqwa working for them. And subhanAllah, kind of vitality, energy, brain power, memory they had. So we can, if we follow in their footsteps, we can hope to reach somewhat to where they reached. Allah give us tawfiq. Freedom of pain, hundreds of illnesses, really. Like this arthritis. This is just cut out the sugar, just cut out the overeating, lose some weight, and much of this is going to shrink up. It's basically body inflation. I'm sorry, inflammation. So inflammation, it's not just, you get a cut and it gets inflamed, but there's a total inflammation that kind of spreads all around in your body. It goes into your joints, it goes into your bones, it goes into your muscles, and it just causes havoc all over. So this chronic inflammation, much of these chronic diseases are caused by this chronic inflation, which can be to a large extent controlled with proper diet, among other things, which we'll talk about. It boosts spiritual awareness, closest to Allah. I think we all, every Ramadan, I'm sure all of us have experienced that, particularly just before iftar, we feel there's a spiritual high kind of thing, So it also renders food more delicious. Yeah. I mean, food really tastes delicious when you're really hungry. If you're full, nothing tastes good, So be intelligent, adopt means of health before your illness. Don't wait to get sick. Look after yourselves, inshallah. Okay, hunger. Again, visceral fat. Visceral fat is this fat that collects around the stomach. It's not only around the stomach, like around your waistline, around your belt line. It actually wraps around all your vital organs. And it's really, really dangerous stuff. It gets around your intestines. It gets around your liver. You get this fatty liver thing. It gets around your kidneys, and it's really, really, it just ushers on all of these diseases mentioned here: heart disease, acne, dementia, gallstones, gastrointestinal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Excessive body fat linked to 25 to 50% of frequent cancer types. So these are all kind of summaries of various studies that were done. West's main health issue is chronic inflammation from wrong eating. 1 to 2 meals a day was the common standard of traditional peoples. Still is. If you go in the mountains of Pakistan, you see they eat a late kind of a brunch kind of a thing, and then they eat after Maghrib. And just what you pretty much find, people go out and they work hard in the fields, and they come and they eat, and they rest a little bit, and they go back out and work. And then they eat once again in the night, perhaps. Some of them just get 1 meal a day, and then they're fine. There's this concept of 3 meals a day. There's a hadith. It's not strong, but in any case, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala, she said the first bid'ah that we're going to see is people eat twice in a day. In the time of their time, they were lucky to find something to eat any time of the day. For months, they would have nothing to eat in their houses except dried up dates and some water. And look what they achieved. So you don't need to be gorging yourself, 3, 4, 5 times a day. 1 or 2 good meals a day, well balanced, high in nutrients, going to be great. Of course, everybody has different metabolism rates. Everybody has different, body sizes, different levels of engagement and utilization of calories and physical activity. So it's not one size fits all, obviously, but nevertheless. But this concept of this breakfast food is really a joke. They came up. Shaikh Noor Keller, he says his theory is that the breakfast hype. He says this was the spillover from the beginning of the food industrialization, which took place around the time of World War I, when they figured out how to kind of process food and put it in packages. You could give it to the troops; they can eat it on the battlefield. And they don't have to worry about cooking or anything. And so now, after the war is over, and we made a killing selling all this stuff to the armies. So how do we keep this going? Okay, we need to sell it to people. They're not used to doing that. Okay, so they came up with this whole hype, this breakfast. So all this breakfast cereal started, flooding the market. Cheerios, Wheaties, I don't know what all. And there's just 10 billion of these things. You go in the supermarket, there's 10 billion different types of this, and it's all junk, total 100% junk. The last thing you want to give your kids, by the way, ladies, please, the last thing you want to give them are these breakfast cereals. Give them some dates, some nuts, some oatmeal if you like, some good, wholesome stuff. Please, these cereals, and they got these guys showing them. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Okay, let's look at these few ayats here, and I think we'll open up the discussion. Let's see what questions we got, and then we'll continue this and complete this section, inshallah, in our next. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كلوا مما في الأرض حلالا طيبا ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. So this is the ayat we mentioned earlier. O mankind, eat of that which is lawful and wholesome. Halalan طيبا. So we're talking about now tayyib. We're going to talk about halal in our next session, which is, congruent to that whole concept of halal, which is one of our sponsors here, of course. So we'll talk about that in a separate section. Right now, we want to talk about tayyib, because halal, we have a kind of a concept. We're going to elucidate on that, inshallah, in the next session. But let's look at tayyib. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says halal and tayyiban. So obviously, there's two things here. People think halal, tayyib, oh yeah, same thing. No, it's not the same thing. Halal means it's legal. Tayyib means it's tayyib. Tayyib means good, wholesome, delicious. It carries all this and more in terms of meaning. So not only we understand it needs to be halal, but it also needs to be tayyib, particularly in this day and age. Really, particularly in this day and age, because very little of what we find in the marketplace is really tayyib. We're so good at producing waste and destroying things. That seems to be man's first and foremost occupation. And what he seems to be best in the 21st century is destroying things, ruining things, corrupting things, and producing waste. So it's not that easy now to get tayyib. It's not that easy to get halal, but it's more difficult to find something which is halal and tayyib. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that more specifically, inshallah, as we go on. Don't follow in the footsteps of the devil. He is your open enemy. You've got an enemy. You're careful about him. You're not negligent. You don't let your guard down. Otherwise, he's going to attack. This is exactly what happens. And this is what he's looking. He's watching us all the time. When do we let down our guard, and then he attacks? So keep that guard up. Inshallah, it's want to give us tawfiq. Again, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. Eat and drink, but don't be wasteful. Don't be extravagant. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like extravagance. Eat to live, don't live to eat, right? So we basically, this 21st, 20th century, ever since we've divorced ourselves from religion, we've lost the objective of our life. So the objective of life now for most of the people is enjoy to the max. Live life to the max. Have you heard that one? Yeah, what do you mean by that? In other words, enjoy to the max. That's what Jannah is about. Here, you try to obey Allah to the max, and then you're going to enjoy to the max forever and ever and ever. You try to enjoy it to the max here, you're going to ruin yourself here. You're going to destroy yourself. You're going to destroy society. You're going to end up in the fire of Jahannam forever. So you're not going to enjoy that at all. So if you really want to enjoy your life, then you follow these instructions from your creator, the one who's designed you, and he knows best about you. So eat and drink, which means that it is not only you are allowed, it is actually what we call sigatul amr, kulu washrabu. It's an order. Eat, drink, but don't be extravagant. So if I say, no, I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to drink, you're disobedient. So that's why when we eat, we say, well, number one, what's my intention? Innamal a'malu binniyat. My intention, what's my intention? Allah says, eat, so I'm going to eat. He says, drink, so I'm going to drink. Because my Allah is telling me to do so. But he's also telling me, وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا, in moderation. Don't enter into excesses. And we're going to talk about that more, inshallah, in the next session. So I would like to see, we've got a lot of things in the chat. So let's look at a few of these. Let's start from that. Okay, There's about 7 minutes remaining. If you would like to open up the questions, okay, we're opening it up. So can you explain the 3 types of nafs? Okay, the 3 types of nafs, once again, I'll just mention that. If you want the explanation, then we have to go into more detailed books, but it's basically nafs al-ammara bis-su, and these are all mentioned in the Quran, by the way. The nafs that is constantly, trying to get us to do wrong, right? And then you have this nafs al-lawama. Nafs al-lawama means the nafs that is always blaming us. Lom means blaming. You did this, you shouldn't be doing that. Look at you, you're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be doing this. Why are you not doing that? That is another characteristic of nafs, or another level of nafs. And then we have another level of nafs, which you won't find except in people who have really struggled, in the path of suluk. And they have this, what we call nafs al-mutmainna. It's also mentioned in Surah Al-Fajr. And ya ayyatuha nafs al-mutmainna irji ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. Return back to your Lord. You are mutmain, you are subdued, you are, congruent with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's orders. So now return to your Lord, well pleased. You'll be pleased, and you have pleased your Lord, and enter into the paradise along with Fathul fi ibadi, enter along with my slaves, right? Those who practice continuous slavery of Allah in submission. Those the people who ultimately, by the tawfiq of Allah, will develop this nafs al-mutmainna, the nafs which is subdued and is not brought under control, and at peace. And so it will go to the place of peace forever, and inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among them. Okay. Also took a guardian ceremony as last fall, stepping stone to my holistic wellness journey. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the tawfiq. Yeah, that's great. Muslims should be connected. We always used to be connected to the elements, to Allah's creation. And it's a very important thing that we lack, we're deprived basically of. There was a mother, she was showing this picture to her child in the inner city somewhere, said, and this is a picture of a thing called a tree. It actually, like, you don't even see trees. There's places, subhanAllah, most of us are, more fortunate to have better circumstances. But I'm telling you, there's people that live in concrete jungles, right? They hardly see trees, And so, reconnecting with nature, and gardening is subhanAllah, you get your hands right, and you're really interacting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation and watching the miracle of life cycle, in action. It's fantastic. Yeah, really. It's very therapeutical also, by the way. Okay, I'm a sergeant from Oakland, California, from the Bay Area. I work as an 40. Okay, great. We'll look over that, because that's great. We appreciate that. So we can find out about people, what they do, and how they got connected here. Okay, what else do we have here? Reminds me of the question 5 to pass on the day of judgment. What did you do with your health when it was given to you? Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, there's another tarif. And okay, if you have some more questions, we can take a few more minutes. Okay, good. I'm a homemaker. Great. I'm a homemaker. People ask, great. I'm glad you said that. People say, the ladies, they have all the ladies psyched out to think you don't have an occupation, you don't have a career unless you're out there somewhere. Like your house, your children, raising new generations, raising humanity, which is the closest thing to prophethood, right? What did prophets do? They raised humanity. So mothers, mothers that look after their household and raise the children, and they're the ones that really, they're the ones that raise them much more than the men. Men are out there earning, they're supposed to be, etc. The women are in the house nurturing these children. If they do it right, they're producing, the next generation of walis and ulama and mujahids, etc., etc. What occupation, what career is greater than that? Tell me. There isn't. And then they're going to tell you okay, you're a housewife. Yeah, but what do you do? What's your career? Really, how skewed that is. So I'm a homemaker. That's wonderful. Glad to hear people are considering that's what they do. Wonderful. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes.
I have questions. So when you are very busy, What's a good meal that you typically whip up when you're pressed for time?
Okay. Yeah, well, that happens to me a lot because I'm usually on my own a lot over here these days. So what I do is I have like dried fruits, nuts, cheese, stuff like that. It doesn't require anything, and if you add to that some fresh fruit along with your nuts and your some cheese, if you don't have some kind of problem with lactose or what's the other thing that if you don't, but generally cheese, it doesn't, even people who have lactose intolerance or the casein, they have a problem with that. Usually they don't. But anyway, these are kind of things that are ready made, fruit, some salad, some vegetables, fresh vegetables, a carrot, a cucumber, celery, ready to go. Fantastic stuff, delicious. Once you cold turkey from all of this salty, sweety snacks that actually we crave. It's like heroin. It actually affects the same places in your brain that heroin affects. The salt and sugar. You need that kind of a high. So when you get used to that stuff, then it's wonderful stuff, and it's much more nutrient dense than most of what we eat. Imagine 3 dates, maybe some dried figs, some almonds, walnuts, and some hazelnuts, cashews, things like this. Maybe throw in a Brazil nut, some raisins, apricots, throw in some fresh fruit, throw in some cheese. You've got a tremendous meal. Delicious also. That's basically what I just had for our dars today. Okay. Anything else?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salam alaikum.
So to add on to what she was saying, so what about for like when it comes to like dinner time, or sometimes it becomes really difficult when we're traveling or like if we're going out with family. So sometimes in those cases we're limited on certain types of food. Sometimes we're easily like oily foods like fast food, or going to like fried foods are very easily accessible. So in that case, when we're on the path of trying to like eat healthier and manage what we're trying to eat, what is like your advice?
Okay, number one, there's a concept called the shared vision, right? Everybody's heard about that? Shared vision. If you want your company to excel, get everybody on the same page with the same vision. So first of all, get everybody in your family on the same vision. If you don't, it's going to be really difficult because you're trying to go in one direction. Everybody's saying, come on, we want this, we want that. But if we, share these trainings, what we're getting in a loving and in a very, pleasant way, not forcing things down people's throats, but presenting it, in a nice way that people can, all the family members can digest this. So get everybody on the same page and then get them to start to think, give them a project. Okay, kids, we're going to travel. We're going to go on a journey this weekend. And so, what are we going to do? How are we going to do the food thing? Come up with a menu, prepare some stuff, give them a project to do. So if we have this in our mind, then we'll prepare for it. Just like anything else, when we're not cognizant, we don't have attention to these things, then obviously we're not going to, give it any importance. But it's not that difficult. You can, easily. For example, one of the great things that you can have in your house is a steamer, a vegetable steamer. Just take some any kind of vegetables, just chop them up, throw them in the steamer, give them 5 minutes of steam. And the water you use to make steam, you'd make a soup out of that. You throw some soy sauce and some, some other things, spices and herbs and whatnot. You got a beautiful soup. So there you got a soup and you got a vegetable, and so it's not difficult to do, but just if that's in our planning, and hopefully everybody plans, we plan our work day. We should plan all of our activities of what our ancestors used to do. So plan your day, and among the things that you plan for your day and perhaps your week, you would plan the meal plan, right? And so if we have a meal plan, then we know we're going to be cooking something might take a little bit longer, maybe a little less. So we factor that in and plan for it. Then things become easy. Write it down in your planning. Block off time for your cooking and all that thing. And if you don't, then you don't have time for that. Then plan something that doesn't require that. Sometimes you have more time, plan something a little bit more, elaborate, and so forth and so on. But once you get the things down, and once you get, inshallah, you get the whole family, thinking along the same lines, realizing the benefit, and it's going to be, everybody's going to pitch in. It's going to be a lot easier. Okay, try that and see how that works, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair.
Wa anything else?
Sheikh, there's a question. It says, is the alkaline versus acidic body a true fact? If so, how to get the body alkaline?
Yeah, well, that's a long thing, and but just like anything else, pH is a reality, so excess in alkalinity or excess in acidity, these are issues, and I don't think we have time to get into that too much, but if you're eating a balanced diet, you're not eating a whole lot of, sweets, you're not eating a whole lot of acidic kind of things, processed stuff, it really becomes not only acidic, it becomes toxic. But if, generally, if you're in pretty much normal health, you don't have some kind of weird, condition, if you're eating a balanced meal, and these fatty diets, I really don't think that's a great idea for the most part. If you're under somebody's treatment and they actually prescribe that, but just, this fad pops up, you'll be going through 20 different diets a week, so, but basic things. You want to have vegetables, you want to have a lot of vegetables, you want to have a variety also, a variety of vegetables, a variety of fruits, meats, good halal meat, cheese, if you don't have an issue with dairy products and stuff like that. Good, balanced stuff, you shouldn't really have a problem. And if you do, then you probably need, special attention, because pH is a reality, just like anything else. We do have pH, it's higher or lower or whatever. So that's to be looked at. But I don't think generally you have to worry about. I've never had to worry about that. I never checked my pH level in my body, or if you feel that there's some things are more acidic, but just it's common, a little bit of common sense, it should, work it out. And if you have some specific problem that will cause some specific attention, that's kind of out of the scope of our discussion here. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, barakallahu feekum. Jazakumullah khair. A lot of our attendees did give a kind of a ta'rif of themselves. Okay, barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah khair, and I really appreciate everybody joining tonight, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq that whatever we hear, Allah give us the tawfiq to understand, digest it, and implement. Ameen thumma ameen. Wa akhir da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. So we will see you next Wednesday, inshallah ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Shaykh.
Barakallahu feekum.